I am at present kind of in the middle of moving, arranging a move, preparing for a move, and this is basically the last room that's really feels inhabitable, essentially. I was looking through all sorts of DVDs, and some of them go back a long way, to different parts of my life, and I kind of sometimes wonder what happened to my the sense of ideals that I used to have, this sort of like cheerful, sort of like quite, I don't know if naive is the right word, but cheerful ideals, progressive ideals, and all that sort of stuff, that I used to have. And it's a really funny thing, because I think the reason I can kind of ask that question now is because I feel my ideals coming back, but those ideals don't have a form as yet. Or maybe they never will, I don't know. But there is this perplexity, as you lower your guard and lower some of your defenses and look to something more open. Because I have no idea exactly how that works out, except that it's right, I know some of how those ideals are closed down, and really I think it's because, it's because of the way things went in the world, even 15 years ago. Even 15 years ago, there was a sense of the same ideals that have been developing for some time, particularly as a homosexual. I don't like the word gay anymore. It's, things seemed to be going in the right direction, and things actually felt pretty fun, and also I felt kind of commitment, a kind of connection with a stream which had come from the past within my own lifetime. And yet, within some period over the last 10 years, I think, though it maybe goes back to about 2011 or so, I just noticed things were not the same, I noticed how there was this note of craziness creeping in even then, and I was beginning to see the sort of like the conformism and the kind of consensus prison that was developing in the so-called LGBT community, and there were various things which gave me disquiet or whatever, but it really took a few years for it to develop, and of course since then it's spread much more into many other fields too. It's not just in the whole LGBT movement that it's gone crazy, and that this strange infection has taken hold, which effectively has meant that ideals have been falsified and destroyed, and there are none there anymore. So that's a funny thing. I suppose I've become clearer on some things. I suppose I have become clearer on some things over a period of time. But it's a really funny thing, though. It really is. can't talk about politics anymore, really. But the concern with things remains. The concern with emergent patterns of power, the concern with how people have their choices taken away from them one way or another, how people are coerced, you know, that's there. But I have to say, with respect to, you know, the whole LGBT movement and everything that came out, what was originally meant to be sort of like kind of homosexual rights, basically, but with various things attached. That has been run aground so thoroughly that we now face a whole load of things where it would almost be madness for people not to push back on it, because it has become mad, and it's not the majority of homosexuals or bisexuals, or the majority, I believe, of actual transsexuals. Yeah. The transgender term has become so corrupted by so many things, I don't know what to say about it, you know. So I'll stick to this, the word transsexual, yeah. But the majority of people, that's not where the problem is. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about that more, because it's pointless. People have to start relating as individuals, yeah, and human beings, and look into common human realities. That's, I think, what people need to do. And certainly there are all sorts of things to call out and all sorts of things to critique and analyze in terms of, like I said, power, the way power is shifting, you know, wholesale shifts in stuff, yeah, taking place. Yes, there is all of that, but there is a real thing opening up, I think, whereby we must focus as individuals and as human beings on the positive that we can bring about in our own lives, in our own awarenesses, in our own consciousness. Yeah, we have to focus on the positive, and for me, I think that means a kind of spirituality, essentially. And I'm not going to say what that spirituality should be for anybody, but it does focus on spirituality. It focuses on values, principles, and an engagement in growth and depth for us all as individuals, us all as human beings. And so that's where I see things at the moment. That's how I see things at the moment. I don't especially see anything else really, but like spirituality, creativity, art, beauty, relationship, love, the finding of actual peace, yeah, and constructive good life. I think those are where I see things. Not really. Nothing else really. So it's so funny. I mean, like I used to have all these sort of like ideals at one time, but the forms of the ideals were couched in well, they just disappeared as anything viable. Gone, quite gone, and yet the substance of ideal remains. This atmospheric presence of ideal remains, and I think that's about as much as I could say on it really. It's there, and we must shed the divisiveness and all the identification and find, as human individuals, how to live positively as ourselves.